Frank Weinberg, who will be helping me with this little talk that I'm going to give today. So by way and a means of an introduction, there we are. There's Frank. You can see Frank over there. Let me move a bit out of the way so you can see. As you can see, we are socially distanced. If anybody thought that wasn't true, but there we are. We are socially distanced. Every year we sit around the table with all different types of people at our Seder. Some are really infused and enthralled and inspired. Morris, are you recording this? Oh, because it doesn't say record on mine. It says record up there. Okay, whatever it does. I hope you've got it. Let's start again. Okay, every year we sit around the table with all different types of people at our Seder. Some are really infused and thrilled and inspired and look forward to spending hours in animated conversation discussing intricate aspects of the Haggadah. Others are more interested in the question, when's the food coming? Others are there to have a good social chat. And listen, we're all part of the Jewish people, and everybody comes for all different people, for different reasons. You've got children, you've got grandparents, and maybe this year, like last year, it's different in the fact we cannot all come together as we normally do. We're still in a lockdown, and so therefore I don't know whether you can go with your bubble or whether you can't, and what is your bubble. So we have to find our own inspiration this year for the Haggadah. And so I jotted down a few different ideas on how to make the Seder inspiring. And I just want to make one little point. This year, it's different. And I mentioned this last week, and it's really important to recognize. You've got Shabbat, which is preceding Pesach, right? So therefore, over the Shabbat, we get this opportunity, funny enough, because we're normally, I don't know about you, when it comes to the Leil Seder, the night of the first Seder night, I don't know, I'm really, really tired. I'm so exhausted, and my wife is even more exhausted than myself because we've been so busy cleaning out everything and making sure everything is ready for the Seder. And so it comes to the Seder, we're almost falling asleep. Normally, my wife inevitably falls asleep. This year, you don't have that. Why? Because all the work that we're supposed to do is supposed to do on the Friday for Shabbat and the Seder night. So therefore, we should be all quite fresh because we have a good Shabbos afternoon, and we've been asleep, and therefore we have this opportunity to have to sit at our Seder, perhaps more awake than in past years. I also just want to make this little point, and this is really important because it's speaking about the most important people at the Seder. And it says like this, Nashim chayavot ba'arba kosot. The women, this is what the Gemara says, Gemara in Pesach says like this, women are obligated with the 4 cups of wine. Now, if it's the 4 cups of wine which are only rabbinical, they're obligated. How much more so with all the other mitzvot of the night that they are obligated? And the Gemara gives a reason, because they were involved in the miracle of the going out of Egypt. Since they were involved, they have also a chiyuv, an obligation to be involved and to be part of it. I just thought I'll bring that in because some people think not so important. They should be sitting there. They should be partaking, talking about it, being part of it. This is my message to all the ladies and the women of the community. Please make sure that you are there and you're inspired and you're part of it, and not just in the kitchen. Some people think that's where they belong or something. I don't think so. I think they have to be involved in what's going on. So I want to, I've jotted down just a few different ideas to make the Seder a little bit more inspiring. Number one, I believe one of the things is song. I personally find that breaking up the Seder with different songs, I find that very helpful. Baruch Hashem, I come, and my family is a musical family, and we have our own particular songs. I'm sure Frank, you have your own songs, and everybody here will have their own specific songs. Actually, we're speaking about the four different songs that we had, tunes for Vihi Sha'amda. I'm sure there's much more than that. And these are the songs that we sing in our particular family every single year, and it makes it special. And we all look forward to singing those songs together. And as we go through, perhaps Frank will going to sing some, I might sing along, but maybe I won't. It depends if he looks at me in a nasty way. I mean, don't sing anymore. Now, number two. So number one, I think the most important thing is inspire with song. Number two, I find that difference, when you have different people coming together, and maybe, as I said, this year, maybe we won't have this problem as much as we do in the past, but I find difference in minhag, different in custom and tradition is actually a good thing. It's lovely to have some Sephardim at your Seder, or to have people who have a Polish outlook, or German way of looking at things, or Lithuanian or Hasidic. It makes it much more interesting. And, it's interesting to go and to find the source of some of these really interesting customs. We've got customs going back thousands of years, and it's great. It does need preparation to look into that, but I think it's important not to come to the Seder cold. In other words, don't come on the night of the Seder and expect to, I'm really inspired. We have to prepare. Look at if you're giving a Seder, or if you're part of a Seder, look at the Haggadah. Look at it beforehand, so that you're able to revise and to see what parts may interest you. What part, hey, that's funny, where does that come from? Why do we do that? Have questions ready to be inspired. And that comes to my next idea, which is number three, and that is to delve into the inner meaning of the Seder. We read in the Haggadah about the 5 rabbis who told the story the entire night. They were sitting in Bnei Brak, and they were sitting and they were recounting the story the entire night until their Talmidim, their students, came and said, "Hey, Rabboteinu, our rabbis, it's already reached to start davening in the morning, to start saying the Kriyat Shema in the morning." And I think this is a very important message. Actually, we say that at the outset of the Haggadah, and that is to teach us that even if we have the knowledge, we can always go deeper. Even if you have the knowledge of these great rabbis, there's a way and a means of finding a way to go deeper. However, there is a word of caution. Make sure that we don't lose people on the way, i.e., you don't want to turn people off. So we might be really enthused about it, but it's important that everybody else is also engaged and part of your Seder. The number 4, so that's number 3. So number 4 is Chanoch lena'a al pi darko. These are words that come from Mishlei, Proverbs, and it means like this: educate a child according to his way. Ganki yamskin lo yasum mimenu, because when he gets older, he will not turn aside from it. So we ourselves have to find innovative. You've got children around the table. Make sure you find innovative ways to engage the children in the Seder. And they could be very simple things. It could be by means of games, or it could be like, for example, in the Gemara, it says that they used to have nuts and raisins to distribute to the children to keep them awake and inspired. So that means that we need to also find that inspiration in ourselves to keep them engaged. An idea, for example, you can play charades for the 10 plagues. Actually, if you've got adults, you can do that. To guess, it's probably a good idea to do that. You can get plastic, by the way, you can buy these in Kosher Kingdom. That is not an advert. You get, and you buy plastic frogs and fake blood for the 10 plagues. You can just bring it to life. You can also make sure that they have colorful Haggadot to keep them motivated. I didn't bring any of those with me, of children's Haggadot, but we've got plenty at home. Actually, I did bring one with me. Let's see if I can show you this one. It's a beautiful one. This is a child's one. Isn't that beautiful? We've got pictures. I love it. It's actually a bit wine stained. Look at that. Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, and he hasn't got a mask. He hasn't got a mask. But there we go. I just think that's this year you would just see the mask. You won't see Eliyahu Hanavi. I think we saw that the other day. So that's one thing that you can do. Make it easy for the children. Play games. Have toys ready if need be. And maybe raisins or modern day things that raisins and nuts to make them motivated. And number 5, the last one, which I think is a very important one, use a Haggadah that you like, not that I like, not that Yanam likes, or the other person, or your son-in-law, daughter-in-law, whoever it might happen to be likes, but something that you like. And it might be one with beautiful pictures. It might be one with deep commentaries. But and if it's that what you like, fine. That's fine. That's what you get out of it, and I think it's beautiful. I have an old Haggadah at home which has these unbelievable. I didn't bring it. Couldn't bring it. Could have brought it. Has these really interesting pictures of this famous Haggadah also, which I have a copy of. I don't know what it's called. I've got it somewhere at home. I have to show it to you. Frank, anything that you think that you could bring innovation?
I was actually thinking about some of the practical implications and the practical participation for the Seder, because we have formal education and we have informal education. And I think that very much the Seder is an evening of informality. We've got a complete cross-section of people at our table. And it's one of the few times when we're taking part in some kind of a service where talking and interruptions and discussion is it's actively encouraged. And no one should be sitting around the table shushing because you're going through the motions of the Seder. The whole idea is that we're going to learn. And the Rabbi was speaking in a minute, the Torah precept of teaching your children. And I don't think any of us can do that if we don't understand ourselves what we're saying. So I think we must make sure that we read the things in English. I don't know how many of us can't read all the words, we can't understand the Hebrew. And I'm sure it's the right thing to read, to say the things in English. We'll get more out of it if we understand what we're doing, and so will the people around the table. I think this year is unique, as was last year. We used to say, well, we had 20 people around our Seder table, or 30 people around the table, however many it was. And this year there could be perhaps 2, 3, 4 of us, sadly, maybe even just a person on their own. And I think that maybe the message here is that when we had the big Seder, people were reluctant to participate, maybe because they struggled with the Hebrew, maybe because they knew they couldn't sing a tune stay in key or stay in tune when they were singing. But I'm guessing that the people you're going to share your Seder with this year know you intimately. And as such, there's no reason for anyone to be embarrassed or to be shy about doing something in front of the others around your table. And I think what we should be doing, if we want to get inspired and if we want to be uplifted, we've got to go for it, basically, and just put something in. You've got to put something in to be able to get anything out of it. You can't just be passive. So don't just go through the motions of sitting there, listening to someone else. Give as much as you take, and it really will lift your spirits. It will lift your enjoyment. One of the things that Annette and I introduced, I can't remember if it was when we had children or just when the grandchildren came along. We do not sit around the dining table for the first half of our Seder. We sit in our lounge, on our sofas, in our armchairs. The kids have got the space to run around. The kids have got the space to move about. We have a coffee table in the middle. The Seder plate is on that coffee table, but we're all comfortable, and it's far less stuffy than sitting formally at the table, not being able to move, worried about what people are going to say, what you're going to do. And it gives you the chance, as the rabbi said, to play games, to play the charades, to do whatever you want to. And what we then do is when it's time when we go out to wash, when we get to the meal, is when we then take the Seder plate, bring it in and put it on the dining table. And after we've washed, we go to the dining room table to continue with that part of the Seder and our meal. And we tend at that stage to stay there for the rest of the Seder, because by then the kids are falling asleep anyway.
Right. I just have one problem with that, Frank, with all my kids and everything else. We don't have enough seats in the living room area. So you have to seat them around it.
Problem you're making, and I'm not now.
Let's not go there.
The rabbi said if you've got the time to prepare things before the Seder, to go in asking questions. And again, you're with people you're people that you know well, they know you. So it doesn't matter the kind of question. No question is too simplistic. No question is going to be laughed at. So if you've got the chance to prepare your questions, but failing that, hopefully, if I could offer a challenge, is during the Seder, come up with the questions. After Pesach, bring your questions to the rabbi for the answers, and you can then bring them back to your Seder next year. I think that's a way of learning and getting something out and then putting back in again afterwards. Come away after, ask the rabbi, go and do your research on the internet, and I'm sure that these things will only help to uplift you, to inspire you, and as I said, don't worry about inhibitions. A custom, not anything that's mandatory by any shape or form, is that the person leading a Seder in a number of households wears a kittel. Rabbi and I were talking. Rabbi, you don't wear a kittel.
No, my father didn't either, and I know that in Chabad it's not a custom. But in my father's house, he came from a Yekish background. Nope, it wasn't done.
Again, look, my family didn't, but I wear the kittel. Broadly, I can see that there are two reasons for wearing a kittel. The ministering angels were clothed in pure white, and those angels came to symbolize a freedom. And therefore, by imitating them, by wearing the kittel, we are imitating the angels. We are showing that we are free. On the other hand, the other extreme is that the kittel, the pure white, resembles the shrouds which we bear when we leave this world. And it also helps us, if you like, to keep our feet on the ground. At the Seder, the whole theme, the major theme is that we're free men, we're free women, we're free people. And so that we don't actually get carried away, we wear the white. It reminds us that we are mere mortals. It reminds us that we're in Hashem's hands and know who you are and where you've come from and where you're going.
I think that's a beautiful idea. Can I just give you one other idea, which I think, there's one other night in the year when we wear a kittel, one other night, which is, of course, the night of Yom Kippur. In fact, it's a night at the end of Yom Kippur, we're still wearing the kittel. And at the very end, we say exactly the same thing as we do at the Seder night, which is the Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. So you have that connection between Yom Kippur and the holiness of that, which is all done in the shul, and you have the night of Seder night, which is also has that parallel holiness, but it's in the home.
Yeah. I think linked to that, speaking personally, I know that when I stand up on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur wearing the kittel to lead the service here, the mere fact you're in white, for me, it does something to my insides. The hairs on the back of my neck, the whole thing is just inspiring. Even, I feel a couple of years ago in Israel, I was wearing the kittel, I was going to daven tal. And there's the great feeling of wearing a kittel. And I think that wearing my kittel at the Seder, again, just lifts me and inspires me to another level as well. And if I'm leading the Seder and can be on that, then hopefully the enthusiasm rubs off on everyone else around the table. Lovely. Joining in our
very nice, very nice, very lovely. I think we do what the customs are in one's particular community. And I think that is important. And that, once again, you see the difference in minhag and the reasons for them. It comes out all the time. So my question now, which is our second part of this evening, is why do we actually have the Seder? So I just want to go through this, very important. We fulfill a number of mitzvot on this particular night. The first one is, of course, the mitzvah of eating matzah, as it says, ba'erev tochel matzahs, in the nighttime you should eat the matzot. There's a mitzvah, there's a positive of ingesting matzah. There's no other time where we make a bracha al achilas, on eating something, except for this night. And then they have the mitzvah of eating maror, al matzos and marorim yochanuhu, that we should eat the kalpan Pesach, the paschal lamb, together with the matzah and the maror. The third mitzvah that we have this evening is the alba kosot, the 4 cups of wine. That is actually rabbinical. You won't find it anywhere in the Torah except that it's based on the pasuk, the verse in the Torah, where it speaks about 4 different expressions of redemption. And since we have that, we have the 4 cups of wine, perhaps speaking about 4 stages of redemption. We'll talk about that number 4 later on. And then we have the mitzvah of the night, which is the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, the telling about the going out of Egypt. The mitzvah is to tell the story, hence the word Haggadah. It comes from the word V'higadata levincha b'yamahu, and you shall tell it to your child on that day. Note that word Haggadah, V'higadata. So really, that's how we get the word Haggadah. You should tell it to your son. We do this by means of the Haggadah, and we do this by means of something that we call the Seder. Where does that word come from? Well, actually, you will find that the word Seder is related to the shoresh, to the root of Sidor. Think about that. Sidor and Seder. The Sidor that we have, our prayer book, and the Seder. And why is it called a Sidor? Because it's organized. And so is the Seder. The Seder goes through a particular organization, and we go through it, Kadesh or the Chutz, all the different things that we talk about. So every part of the Seder is part of the order. And and we're fulfilling a mitzvah by just sitting there and ingesting the story of the going out of Egypt. Now, we're going to come to the Seder plate. I thought I would bring my own Seder plate here today. And so what I've done is I'm going to see if I can share screen with you so you can have a look at this. Here's the content from my second camera. Oh, is it working? There we are. We've got my Seder plate. This is my beautiful Seder plate here. I always like to show this off. I don't know if anybody else has a Seder plate like this, but it's just beautiful and exquisite. And I love it because it's got the actually, you've got the 10 plagues. Let me just move out so you can all see it, or maybe, no, move out a little bit. It's all a matter of playing around with this particular camera. There we are. And you can see this beautiful Seder plate. Normally I have little cups and little bowls that I put over here. And here you have all the different parts of our Seder plate. By the way, there are different minhagim, different customs. There is a famous rabbi called the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, who has one particular minhag, and you have also the Gra. The Vilna Gaon also has another particular minhag. It's not really important to know the exact way in which it goes, but here we have it. You've got the kalpas, which you can see is depicted here as parsley. Actually, we use in our house, we use parsley. We dip a little parsley into the salt water. But I have to be honest, if you go to other houses, they don't actually do that. And my wife uses potato, not raw potato, don't worry. It's cooked up beforehand. Some people use radish. Some people use radish for that. And I think that's beautiful. Then we have maror. Here's the maror. You can see that over here. The maror, it's depicted here by the horseradish, but actually we use two different types. We use the horseradish as delineated in the Mishnah, but there's also something called salata. Salata is actually what we have is a cos lettuce or a romaine lettuce that we call it. And we use that together with the maror, the horseradish. And we have quite a lot, quite big amounts of it, not of the horseradish, but of the romaine lettuce to fulfill the mitzvah. What do? You do the same thing, the romaine lettuce together with that? You have to have, I have to have a specific amount. Then we move on and we have over here, we have the zeroah. We have the two different kinds of, once again, it's mishnaic. You've got the zeroah, which is the shank bone. I don't have a shank bone here, but you can see it's depicted by a sheep over here, which is as a remembrance to the Korban Pesach, to the Paschal lamb. And then we have a beitzah. A beitzah is an egg, and that's a remembrance to the Korban Chagiga, the festival sacrifice. Indeed, it's our custom. And I find that just about everybody the world over does exactly the same thing. And that is, we have the egg in the salt water. You have to do that. We all do it. And you know what? It tastes delicious. I don't know why. But it's something special for that particular night. You can't have it any other night, do you? Egg and salt water? No way. But for Leil Seder you can. But there's a reason for that. Number one, because there's a certain avelut, there's a certain amount of mourning, because of the fact that we don't have the sacrifices as we used to have. So that an egg is a sign of mourning. But there's another idea also. That is that the night of Tisha B'Av is also the night of the Seder night. It always falls on the same night of the year. I just thought which is the saddest night of the year. And as a reminder, that's what we do. Go on.
Could the salt water and the egg also be the reminder of the lives that were lost in Yetziat Mitzrayim?
Could be.
The innocent people that were killed.
Yeah, it could be, because Bimfol or Yivacha al Tismach, when your enemy falls, do not rejoice. So yes, it could be, and I think we could. Once again, you can have a multiplicity of explanations to the same idea. I think that's an important point. Chalro says, now over here you'll see what they have here: nuts, apple, and wine. And I know that Clemmy is here this evening, and Clemmy uses something completely different, and probably cooks things up and everything, because that's a Sephardi minhagim. And actually, you can look into Rambam, Maimonides, in his Hilchas Chametz al Matzah, in the laws appertaining to Chametz al Matzah, and he goes, to the nth degree to tell us what the Chametz is. The Ashkenazi custom is just to use this, and this is as a reminder of the mortar. But it was sort of like an antidote to the strength of the maror, of the bitter herbs. You find that in the Gemara. It speaks about that. Then finally, we have the mayim maluach, which is the salt water, which we dip our egg and our karpas and into there. And I think that's about that on that. Let me come back now from here. Let me just come out of there. Oops. There we are.
Rabbi,
Yes.
may I ask you a question?
Yes, Richard, go on, ask the question. I don't mind. If you go on.
It just occurred to me.
Yeah.
I just like the concept of like the salt water in both what you described with the egg.
Yeah.
Could it be also symbolic of the fact that, like, when Moses took us out of Egypt, we were flanked, the Jews were flanked by a wall of salt water either side of us as we got through our Exodus?
Yep, never thought about it. I think that's wonderful. Very nice. I think that could be another reminder of that, apart from the tears and everything else that we do. You know what? We can expand upon that as long as it doesn't detract from our enjoyment of the Seder and understanding of the Seder. A different interpretation, beautiful. Now, next thing I'm going to do, thank you very much, Richard, for that. Lovely, thank you very much. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to sing through what we do in our house. I've got the Chief Rabbi Siddur over Haggadah over here, which I love to use because the explanations are just beautiful on the Leil Seder, on the nights of the Seder. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have the simanim. The simanim are not here. So instead, I'm going to find another one which has the simanim. But the simanim, it's really quite funny. I open up the first one. It's an interesting one. It looks like a matzah. This Haggadah looks like a matzah. And we're going to read it through. I'm actually going to sing the tune that we use. And then Frank will tell me he used a different one. This is the one I was brought up with. It goes like this. Kadesh Urechatz Karpas Yachatz Magid Rochza Motzi Mahatza Malach Orech Shulchan Orech Tzafun Barech Hallel Nivitza. Now, I know what Frank's going to say. He said, I do this tune. No, I'm going to sing.
Don't do a tune at all.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no.
I always get one of the kinder to do it. And sometimes we all sing it together. We do another one, which is like this. Kadesh Urechatz Karpas Yachatz Magid Rochza Motzi Mahatza Malach Orech Shulchan Orech Tzafun Barech Hallel Nivitza. Now this, of course, is just a way. Remember what we called it? We called this the Seder, and it's Seder night. And we're going through the Seder. And this is part of the order. And we remember this by the different simanim. The simanim are the signs telling us this is Kaddish, this is Kiddush, this is Rechatz, this is washing the hands, this is Kalpas, this is where we did there. So we know immediately where we are at what particular part of the Seder night. I think it's a beautiful custom that we have. And by the way, I have a Haggadah at home. It's called the Kasher Haggadah, which gives traditions going back to the 9th to the 10th century of completely different orders in the Simanim. It seems that it was set in about 11th or 12th century. Quite interesting how it changes. Right, now we're going to move on to Manishtana. Frank, I think you've got something to say about this.
Not so much about Manishtana, but the idea of the you mentioned to it previously, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Shall I turn this around?
Yes, go ahead.
The number 4 appears to be the key number for the theme for the Seder. We've got 4 sections, or we appear to have 4 sections, which are subdivided into 4. We have Manishtana, and there are 4 questions within that. We talk after that about the 4 sons. We talk about the 4 cups of wine, and the rabbi has already alluded to the 4 expressions of redemption, which happen to appear in the Seder of Va'era, one that is quite well known to me.
Yeah. Your Bar Mitzvah Seder of
my Bar Mitzvah, where we talk about V'hotzeti etchem, I will bring you out from Egypt. V'hitzalti etchem, I will deliver you from bondage. V'goalti etchem, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. And V'lakachti etchem, I will take you to me, Hashem speaking, as a nation. So it seems that we've got the 4 sections, and each one subdivided into 4, so we've got a very nice symmetry about the whole thing. But the late, deeply missed Rabbi Sachs, in his Haggadah, in an essay, and I've heard him actually deliver a lecture on this, actually says that there's actually a 5th group of 4. And if you look in the Seder of Devarim, in chapter 26, there are 4 expressions which form the underlying theme for the Seder. And just skipping through, we've pushed for time. An Aramean tried to destroy my father. The Egyptians ill-treated us and afflicted us. We cried to the Lord our God about the God of our fathers. And the 4th one is, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt. So what we've now done is we seem to have, Rabbi Sachs has spoilt the symmetry, because we now have 5 sections, each subdivided into 4. So what's the answer? Well, Rabbi Sachs takes it a step further, because he said, well, we have 4 cups of wine, but then he said, well, maybe we don't. In the early editions of the Talmud, Rabbi Tarfon said that there should actually be 5 cups of wine, and that the 5th cup of wine would be recited over the great Hallel. If I'm not mistaken, the great Hallel is the Hodul Hashem that we recite in full, the one that we say on Pesukei Tzimra on a Shabbat Yom Tov morning, and it comes in the
Psalm 134,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
If I'm not
So, and
mistaken.
it comes after the normal Hallel in the Seder. And Rabbi Tarfon said that that's when you should have your 5th cup of wine. Rashi and a number of other commentators disagreed and said, no, that's not the case. And in fact, they came up with a compromise. And again, I'm slightly cutting it short. And the compromise is we do have a 5th cup of wine. We don't drink it. And that cup is reserved specifically for Elijah. So we actually still have at the Seder 5 cups of wine. The Jerusalem Talmud says that we have 4 cups of wine to match the 4 expressions. But then, if you say, well, we've got 5 cups of wine, let's go back to the Seder of Va'era, and there are actually 5 expressions, because we've covered the first 4, and then the 5th expression comes up in the following pasuk, where it says, V'heveti etchem, I will bring you to the land. So we've now got the 5 different themes that we spoke about. We've got 5 cups of wine. We've got the 5 expressions of redemption. So where do we go from here? Manishtana. And again, as I probably in the Yiddish, I was brought up with my grandparents talking about the fear kashas. But in fact, the Mishnah states that a child should ask another question where he says, on all other nights, you must eat meat that is cooked, boiled or roasted. But on this night, only roasted meat. And indeed, in the early editions of the Haggadah that have been discovered in the Cairo Geniza, this 5th question is included in the Manishtana. So in actual fact, even though custom today is that we have 4 questions, historically, there were 5. So then, are we then stumped because we had the story of the 4 sons, the wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, and the son that's there that doesn't know how to ask. The late Lubavitcher Rebbe suggests that there was a 5th son. He actually says that there were 4 sons sitting around the table, but there was a 5th son who actually wasn't there. There was a son who was totally lost through assimilation. And in actual fact, there were 5 sons. And then I also mentioned that the pattern of the 4x4 was broken by the 4 Pesukim that appear in the Devarim. But in fact, again, if you look in the next pasuk and go to verse 9 in chapter 26, there's another verse which says, he brought us to this place, a land flowing with milk and honey. So I think that whilst we today talk about 4 sections with 4 questions, we actually have the 5 questions in Manishtana, we have the 5 sons, we have the 5 expressions of redemption, 5 cups of wine, and the 5 biblical passages from Devarim. So all in all, we do have a symmetry of 5 sections with 5 questions and not the 4x4. And that's thanks to the late and deeply missed Sachs.
And I think that idea is telling us that we're not actually there yet. And we have to reach that time of the 5th cup. And the 5th cup of wine, of course, is the Koshel Eliyahu, the cup of Elijah, which we don't drink. Actually, the custom is many people take the Koshel Eliyahu, the cup of Elijah, and to drink it in the morning, to keep it for Kiddush in the morning, which is actually interesting custom to do at that particular time. Can I just add my little thing, because you mentioned about the Babli, the Babylonian, the Mishnah actually has 4, but they don't have Kulana Mesubim. All of us are, yes, Kulana Mesubim, all of us are reclining. That came later. The Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud only has 3 questions. And it's the Rambam, Maimonides, and a few other ones also has 5. So you've got 5, 4 things. So it's not it's love dafka, not necessarily Tata, ich will dir fragen, 4 kashas. Father, I want to ask you 4 questions. It could be 5, could be 3. I'm not really sure.
The 5x5 is.
Yeah, we need Elijah to come and give us the answer to that. That's what we need. And that leads us on to the 4 sons. And I always begin this with a little song. Once again, we're always waiting for these little songs to come in. And it goes like this. Baruch hamakom baruch hu, baruch shenata Torah lamo Yisrael. Baruch hu, blessed be he. Baruch hamakom baruch hu, baruch shenata Torah lamo Yisrael. Baruch hu. Blessed is Hamakom, the Almighty, blessed is He. Blessed is He who gave the Torah to His people Israel, blessed is He. And this comes along and says, Keneged al ba'avanim divrei Torah. The Torah speaks of 4 children. Echad chacham, one who is wise. Ve'echad rasha, one who is wicked. Ve'echad tam, one who is simple. Ve'echad she'eino yodea lishol, and the one who does not know how to ask a question. So the question on this particular little verse in the Haggadah is very, very simple. Why does it have to say echad before each one? One who is a wise person, and one who is a rasha, and one who is simple, and one who doesn't know how to ask a question. It would have just been enough to say the chacham, the rasha, the tam, and the one who doesn't know how to ask a question. You don't have to say echad by each one. The answer which is given is beautiful. They're all connected together. All of these are different, but they're all connected together. And what is that? The echad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the one. So each one, we might be all disparate and coming from all different areas of the world, etc., but we are all connected, intrinsically connected, in essence, by the fact that we are children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the Almighty. The question which is asked by many of the Mefarshim, of the commentators, is, wait a second, why is the Chacham put next to the Rasha? Why is it the wise person, the wicked person, the Tam, the simple person, the one who doesn't know how to ask a question? Why in that order? Well, some people say that it's actually going in order of cleverness. The wise child, the wicked child, the simple child, and the one who doesn't know how to ask a question. I understand that answer, but actually there's another beautiful answer. Once again, we call upon the Lubavitcher Rebbe, gives a little answer, and it says like this: the Chacham and the Rasha, it is actually the Chacham who has the power to influence the Rasha. Put them next to each other, so the good influence will hopefully mashpia, or have an effect on the one who is contrary. And that's the reason why they're put together. And by the way, it's not the only time we have this. We have the etrog, which is the etrog, which symbolizes the Jew with the Torah and the mitzvot. It's put next to the willow, which has no smell and no taste, which symbolizes the Jew maybe needs to improve. And it's actually the etrog Jew who should be reaching out towards the other one. I just thought that's a beautiful little message that we can learn from that. Frank, over to you. The Hi She'amda.
Just before we started this Zoom this evening, the Rabbi and I were exchanging tunes that we sing for the Hi She'amda. And I think predominantly there are 2 tunes, one that I defined as the traditional, and one which I'll come on to in a second. But I guess that the traditional tune that we sing is along the following lines. V'hi she'amda, v'hi she'amda, lavoteinu belanu. V'hi she'amda, v'hi she'amda, lavoteinu belanu. She'lo avir amar aleinu l'chalotenu, she'lo echad bilvad. And so on, which I'm sure you know how it goes. And I guess a number of you actually sing that at your Seder. Much more recently, contemporary, is a composer by the name of Jonathan Razel, who made a tune very well known. And I think it was probably sung by Shreki And the tune, a much more modern Israeli. And again, a lot of people will sing this at their Seder, and I'm sure one that you know. V'hi she'amda l'avoteinu, v'hi she'amda l'avoteinu v'lanu, she'lo echad bilvad amad aleinu l'chaloteinu. Amar aleinu lachaloteinu. Carries on. V'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu, matzilenu mi'adam. V'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu, matzilenu mi'adam. They're the two tunes that I'm sure are very well known to you. But I think it's just appropriate here for what I'm going to say next, that we just look at the English and what we've actually just said. And again, using the translation from Rabbi Sax's Haggadah, it's this promise that has stood by our fathers and by us. For it was not one man alone who stood up against us, but in every generation they stand up against us to destroy us. But the Holy One, blessed is he, saves us from their hand. And how appropriate that actually is. In 2002, the Weinberg family spent their first ever Pesach in Israel, staying in Netanya. We just started our Seder when suddenly we couldn't hear ourselves for the sound of sirens from outside the flat where we were. The Hamas bomb had just been detonated in the Park Hotel, maybe 300 meters from where we were. 30 people who were celebrating freedom were murdered that night. 140 were injured. In every generation, they rise up to destroy us. 10 months later, marked the Shabbaton Choir's first Solidarity Through Song mission to Israel. We defied government advice in England not to travel to Israel due to the Gulf War. The Hakadosh Baruch Hu Matzilenu mi'adam, the Holy One saves us from their hand. The choir, the Chazanim, and indeed Rabbi Sachs, Dafka, we stayed at the Park Hotel. And the keynote concert we gave on that trip was in the Park Hotel to honor the police, to honor all the medical services, the fire brigade, and the many, many people who collectively saved so many lives on that first night of Pesach in 5762. For that concert, Stephen Levy, our musical director, wrote a new piece of music to these very words of the V'hi she'amda, given just how appropriate and how apt they were. And just going to play a clip now, which is sung by Shimon Kramer. And certainly, my Seder, when we sing the V'hi she'amda, has never been the same since 2002.
Right, and this comes straight off YouTube, so. Sorry about that.
understand the words that Shimon polluted. The words of
Shalom Echad milevad Amar Aleinu L'chaloteinu Elohim Shebechol Dor Vador Havedim Aleinu L'chaloteinu L'hakadosh Baruch Mahatzileinu Me'adam Elohim Shebechol Dahir Vador Havedim Aleinu L'chaloteinu V'hakadosh Baruch Mahatzileinu Me'adam.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so
Just-
much. Yeah.
It's one thing singing it at your Seder table, which I try to, but it's another thing standing up in the Park Hotel, having witnessed the bomb and standing there 10 months later and singing it there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know that some people that want to ask questions, please ask questions at the end. And we do want as many questions as possible. I mean, isn't that what it's all about on Seder night? So we definitely do want those questions. Let me just, I'm going to jump a little bit. I was asked to speak a little bit about why is it that we pour out wine of the, when it comes to reciting the 10 plagues. It's really a very interesting custom. In my family, and I'll talk about my father's family, it goes back, actually, we use spoons. We use spoons in my father's family. Why do we use spoons? To dip into the wine, not the finger. I'll tell you why. It goes back to probably many, many years ago in Newcastle upon Tyne, where my grandparents were living together with my father and my auntie, and they opened up the door. Well, they didn't open up the door, but they had a knock on the door. You know, when it says, Kol dich v'yesei v'yechol, everybody come, anybody who needs, come and eat. Somebody actually appeared at the door. Well, it actually appeared, and there was a really interesting story. And the guy, he was like a beggar, and my grandparents, being very good people, they invited him in. And it came to the actual dipping of the wine, they took his fingers, and they were extremely dirty, and the nails were dirty, and he put it into the wine. Afterwards, he drank it. Since then, it was always a custom in our family not to put the fingers in the actual in the wine, but to either pour it out or to use a spoon. That's where it comes. I don't know what you do in your house. I don't know what you do at home, but this is interesting. You see, that's where different customs come. But why do we do that? And by the way, in the Sephardic community, when I first started doing this, we were pouring out the wine. My wife went around afterwards and said, collect all your wine in the basin. And she went and poured it out. She said, that's cursed wine. I said, okay, that's the Sephardic custom. But I tell you what, why do we do it? I tell you what it is. It's symbolizing blood. And we recognize that through the 10 plagues, many people were hurt, and it wasn't something that we are happy about, as we say. And I think we mentioned this before. It's Shmuel HaKatan who says in the Pirkei Avot, "B'nafol oyivcha al tismach." When your enemy falls, do not rejoice. We must never rejoice at the downfall of our enemies. We're saddened for what had to happen. And really, that is symbolized by the fact that we pour the wine away, saying we really are saddened by this. And that's the reason why we do that. It's interesting that the person who actually made up that dictum, the Shmuel HaKotan, was also the author of a very interesting little prayer in our Shmona Esrei in our everyday Amida. In fact, the 19th bracha. It's V'lam Ashni Malti Zikra. To the slanderers, there should not be any hope. And I was just trying to think, why is it that Shmuel HaKotan would be the person to be the author of the V'lam Ashnim, which is really quite a hard thing, because the bracha is saying that, you know, those who slander us against the Jewish people, they shouldn't have any hope and they should be destroyed, etc., which is, and there's different perushim, different commentaries who it's referring to. Now is not the time to go into that. But the question was, why did they choose Shmuel HaKotan to say it? I think it's Shmuel HaKotan because he said, when your enemy falls, you should not rejoice. He wasn't talking about rejoicing about his enemies. They had to find somebody whose soul was clear and pure, and they found Shmuel HaKotan, who had that pure soul, therefore was able to be the author of that particular bracha, which has negative connotations. I just thought that's interesting. Frank, over to you.
We've made the point a few times this evening that the whole concept of the Seder is very much based on tradition. It really does come through the family over the years. And it's, Rabbi may mention before, you know, you do what your father did. A lot of people take that approach. And how do we learn a lot of the tunes and the things that we sing and the customs that we do at the Seder? It's come through the generations. If I ask my father where he got it from, it was what his parents did and where they got it from before that. And it's very interesting that we are now going to talk just briefly, not talk about, but to sing Dayenu. And I'm guessing that the tune for Dayenu, and just do a couple of the verses, is one that has probably become universal to a large extent now.
Where does it come from?
The tune itself,
Yeah.
I have no idea.
It's Chabad. Sorry.
Is it a Chabad tune?
Oh yeah, another one. Get in everywhere. Hotziyanu min Mitzrayim v'lo asavachim shepatim dayenu. Dayenu.
They say enough. But for years, I'd never heard that tune.
Oh,
And I sang a tune that my father had sung, and we still intersperse this in the tune alternators, not quite alternate, but we'll always pick up a few of the tune to make my father feel part of the Seder, to do his tune.
let's hear your tune. I want to hear something different.
And it's very repetitive for however many lines of Dayenu there are, but that was a tune that my father used to sing, that he taught me. My kids know it, and our Sedarim will all do that to keep that tradition going. And I think that the beauty of a Seder is to keep the traditions going.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So if you know your own tune, there's no right tune, there's no wrong tune. Just keep going what your generations before you.
Yeah, I mean we've got lots of tunes that come in right through the Seder, and I think it's something really important to keep those traditions and to keep those minhagim. Kittel, no kittel, whatever it happens to be, to keep the custom. It really, really is important to do that because this is what we have as Jews. This is what we have. Now, I'm going to go on now to speak to you a little bit about the Hallel. The Hallel comes as an integral part of the Seder. In fact, we say the words, therefore we are obligated to praise you, and we're supposed to come to this level of Hallel. But the Hallel that we do, that praise that we do on the night of the Seder is different than the rest of the year. Why is it different? I'll tell you why. Because we split it right in the middle. That's number one. We recite a bracha beforehand, a blessing before reciting the Hallel, because normally we say Likroyat Hallel, to read the Hallel. Also, we're not supposed to talk during the Hallel. We're not allowed to interrupt, and we're supposed to say it standing. We don't do any of those things on the night of the Seder. In fact, we have it on two sides of the meal. The first side of the meal, you have half of Hallel, well, actually 2 parts of Hallel, and the next side of the meal, you have the rest of the Hallel, which is really quite a strange thing. And I think it's trying to teach us something very important. The night of Seder, it's a memory of the Korban Pesach, of the Paschal Lamb, and the Paschal Lamb in itself was part of the service. And that's what we're saying. It's part of the actual meal itself is an integral part of the service. And I think it speaks to us and tells us a message that we are sanctifying the mundane through our meal. And I think it's something really important through that. There were lots of other things we want to say, but I think we're running short of time. Should we take a few questions at this point? Frank, do you want to say anything more?
No, I just thought that what we're doing is just to whet the appetite, it's just to sing a verse or two of the songs.
Yes, of course. We're going to sing a few of the concluding songs at the end. By the way, people always ask me, when was the Haggadah written? And I would turn around and say, yes. The answer is the Haggadah has been written over 2,000 years. There's 2,000 years of Jewish history in the Haggadah. And the most recent part of the Haggadah are really the songs at the end. And there we're talking about 500-600 years old, some of these songs. Not that old, but I think it's important to recognize that. But some part of the Haggadah comes all the way back from the Mishnayot period. So you've got all different periods, and it's built up over the years. And I think that's really important to recognize. We're going to sing.
I've got
Kilo Na'eh.
to start.
Okay.
And again, I don't know what tune you sing. Kilo Na'eh is, and following that, we also sing, if you like, the keynote tune of Pesach is probably Adiyahu. It's just worth noting, if you haven't already realized, that both of those run in alphabetical order. A common theme in our prayers and in our songs, but they run through in alphabetical order. And depending on your Haggadah, the phrasing, the number of words in each stanza will vary, the number of stanzas in the whole piece will vary. And again, you do either what's in your book or what your father did before you.
So start with
the Weinberg tune I'll do, and feel free to introduce a black tune if you want to.
Okay. This is the Weinberg tune, the first time being aired in public. Same as ours. There we are. We do the same tune, and this is a black tune. Oh no, you took it from us.
I've got to tell you, my daughter, since she's got married, they do something different, and I don't ask them because I don't know it.
I think it goes like this: Kilo Na'eh, Kilo Na'eh. But you know what? I don't like that one. I like this one. That's the one we do. Right, turn over the page. What are we doing?
Next is Adiyahu. One of the concluding songs, again, as I say, it's the keynote tune. Probably talk a little bit more about the music next week in our third series. But the tune of Adiyahu I don't know if there's another
No.
tune for Adihu. If there is, never heard it.
I know.
But let's go for it anyway. Adihu,
Adihu yifne beis avakaro, bimheira, bimheira, biyameinu bekaro, el b'nei beitcha bekaro. Bakurhu, gadolhu, dagolhu, yivne beito bekaro, bimheira, bimheira, biyameinu bekaro. El b'nei beitcha bekaro. What's next? You know, we do the same tune. He's taken them all from me, you know that.
The counter.
We continue.
You start that one, and then I'll sing a different one.
Okay, I bet I could do the one you do differently.
I'm sure you can.
Okay. Echad mi yodeya, echad ani yodeya, echad Eloheinu shebashamayim uba'aretz, shnayim mi yodeya, shnayim ani yodeya, shnei luchotafit, echad Eloheinu, 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 sheba shamayim uvaretz. Now do your one. Go on, Frank.
Shlosha mi yodeya, shlosha mi yodeya, shlosha avot, shnei luchot haprit, echad Eloheinu shebashamayim uba'aretz. Arba mi yodeya, arba mi yodeya, arba imahot, shlosha avot, shnei luchot haprit, echad Eloheinu shebashamayim uba'aretz.
Oh, I picked that one up pretty quickly.
That came from West Hampshire.
Ah, okay.
That's where I learned that one.
I have a slightly different one from you, as you probably heard, but I know that one. I know that one that we did before. Okay, Chad
I
Gadia.
don't know if there's other tunes here that people.
Huh? Maybe somebody could share with us when we
When we can take the question.
go together. Yeah. Chad Gadia, one only kid, one kid.
Just an interesting thing of this, because the words vary from Haggadah to Hannah.
Yeah.
The Zabin, Dizvan, Abba.
Yeah, this one about this thing.
This one, the Zabin.
The Zabin. It's probably the Zabin.
And this one, my Haggadah talks about Bitrei Zuzeh.
Yeah.
And otherwise Bitrei Zuzim.
Zuzeh is probably more correct. In this
But if you look at the Haggadah,
Yeah.
I'm not a grammarian, I don't know.
to say. Well, actually, it's Aramaic. It's not Hebrew. It's actually important to know. It's related to Hebrew, but it's not actually Aramaic. There we go. Chad, Gad, Ya, Chad, Gad, Ya, De, Zabin, Abba, Bisley, Zuzeh, Chad, Gad, Ya, Chad, Gad, Ya. The Asasun, Rabbi Yachla, Gad, Zabin, Abba, Bisley, Zuzeh, Chad, Gad, Ya, Chad, Gad, Ya. Yeah, almost exactly the same. There we go. We do exactly the same thing. She did the last verse. Want to do the last verse? The last verse. I do this because I like to do it fast. There we go. That was fun.
Hopefully that's just let you know what's happening next week. 10 days now.
Yeah, it's not far to go. Not long to go till to that. Any questions about anything you've seen?
Yes, please.
I think yes. Joy.
Yes. When you had the Seder plate, your egg on it,
Yeah.
in my family, we've always burnt the egg. What is the significance of burning the egg shell?
I would think the reason why we burn it is that it should look a little bit like a korban, like a sacrifice. By the way, we also burn the egg, but we don't burn the egg that we eat. So
No.
our family, we also burn it. By the way, some people use, when it comes to the zeroa, they use a shank bone, and other people, they specifically don't want to use a shank bone, so they use a neck of a chicken because they or a chicken wing because they don't want it to be look like a korban, a sacrifice. So on the one point, people want it to look like a sacrifice, and the other point they don't. So you've got two conflicting customs there, which is very interesting. Good question, Joy. I hope I answered it okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else, please? I think Rita, you have a question. Please.
Yeah, I have two things to tell you. First of all, I think I have two deaf daughters, and there was one occasion when I had 8 deaf people around the table and 8 hearing people, and I did the interpretation in British Sign Language. But the sign for Seder night in British Sign Language is dipping the wine, dipping a small finger into the wine.
Oh,
that's a sign language we use.
Yeah, can you do it, please, with a spoon in future? Thank you.
Won't be the same. And the other question I want to ask: what do vegetarians do about the shank bone?
You could, you know what? We're not eating it. You can have a fake one. You don't have to have a thing. It depends why you're a vegetarian.
We don't eat meat over Pesach. It makes life a lot easier. We've cut out and got rid of all my flesh.
Yeah, but you're not actually a vegetarian, are you?
We're not actually a vegetarian.
You're not a vegetarian.
But I do go and get one from the butcher, a bone, because I don't buy any meat over Pesach. But I go and let my butcher sell, they give a charity.
Okay.
So I do have a bone, but if I don't get to the butcher and get a bone, what can I use?
I think you could just use something. You know something. The Gemara actually gives a whole lot of different items that you could use for the Shnei Tavshilin, for these two different tokens. Because remember, they're only zeiche. It's only as a remembrance
symbol
of a symbol. It's a symbol. It's completely and utterly a symbolism, and therefore you could use whatever you like.
I thought a piece of celery would look like a bone.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a big traditionalist like myself, you would want a piece of celery, whatever. You could have a photo of one. You know what I mean? But you want it to be real, and you want to have your Seder plate real. So I think you could. Yeah, but I don't think it's a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. Okay, Rita?
Thank you.
Who else would like to ask a question, please?
Can I come in here?
Yes, Robert, please. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for a fascinating evening. It's been really very enjoyable and informative.
I can't see you, Robert. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm here in my office.
Oh, there you are. Okay, yes. Okay, yeah.
You showed us your Seder plate with a receptacle designated for salt water.
Yes.
I don't think I've seen that before. Is that a common practice?
Yes, I think so. On a lot of Seder plates they have. I've got an Israeli one. This is just one I like because it comes from my father's collection, and that's why I particularly am fond of it. But I've got about 3 or 4, and I think each one of them has salt water in there. So you can have it as part of the Seder plate, or you don't need to. Some people have another thing called chazeres.
Yes.
Chazeres, which is actually another name for the maror. So you could have it as a different type of maror to have. Maybe you could use it for the letters. The other thing is we have such an abundance of it that we need our own pan for that. So this is good that we have it like that. Yeah.
Do you remember the story from Kenton's communal Seder where Rabbi Znaimer ordered lettuce in large sheets for everybody to have?
Yeah.
And the waitresses were preparing the meal while we were doing the first half of the Seder. And when they came out with the chazeret, they just pulled it apart.
Oh no! Oh my God. That reminds me of that part, that clip.
Memorable.
that clip in this film called Ushpizin, where a guy who didn't know anything of anything.
With a lemon tea.
He put the electronic, it's only a film, and he cut it into the it's a 90-pound electrode. An expensive sol at that. It's not real. It wasn't it? Any more questions? Thank you, Robert. Anybody else like to ask?
Yes.
Yes.
May
who's
I?
that? Who is that? Ah,
May-
yes, Richard. Go on.
May I ask another?
Oh,
I know I ask a lot of different things,
lovely.
but
Wonderful.
you made a good point saying that the Siddur is a guide, and that's where the word Seder comes from.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't tell us the what custom we should perhaps do if Elijah actually comes on our Seder night. And I wondered, how you might interpret that.
Okay, so I'm going to give you my very quick answer to that one. The quick answer is Elijah will tell us what to do. When he comes to our Seder night, Elijah will come and he'll tell us when the Mashiach will be here, and that will be the time that we would think. Does that answer the question? He will actually tell
Yes.
us, and that's actually the interpretation of why we have Elijah's cup. We didn't have time to go into it, but Elijah is the one in the Talmud that we say that Elijah is going to come and answer all the questions that we have, the accumulated questions that we have, that could never be answered in the Talmud. In fact, many times you have the word teku. Teku means tishbi, yavo, he'll come and he'll answer all the questions that we'll have, and he'll come and answer this particular question of whether we need the fifth cup or not.
Why and why do we need Elijah to come before the Mashiach? That's what I would like to know. That's just the second part of my question.
Okay, Elijah, I mean, this is a deeper question, and you have to look into the Talmud in Sanhedrin, where it says some beautiful stories about Elijah and how some of the rabbis, they met up with Elijah. They had the Gilui of Eliyahu, it's called, the revelation of Elijah coming, and they had this, and Elijah is supposed to be the Mavaser. He is supposed to be in tradition, the one who's going to give us the news of when Mashiach is going to come, right? And there is this beautiful story, which I've told dozens of times. I normally tell it on Pesach. I mean, the 8th day of Pesach, it's a beautiful idea. And that is that Elijah, there was a famous rabbi called Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who he had a Gilui Eliyahu. Elijah came to him, revealed himself to him. He said, Shalom Aleichem ben Levi. He says, peace be upon you, Ben Levi, Yehoshua ben Levi. And Yehoshua ben Levi said, who are you? He said, I'm Elijah the prophet. He says, Emasi Kasima, when is Mashiach coming? He says, when is the Messiah coming? To which Elijah said to him, go to the Shah Roma, go to the gates of Rome. The gates of Rome is the Arch of Titus. Go there. And there you'll see all the paupers. And all the paupers there, they will be unwrapping they will be wrapping up all their bandages from the captivity that they're in. But you'll notice who Mashiach is, because he'll be unwrapping his bandages and wrapping him and then unwrapping it again. So he goes along, he sees Mashiach, and he says to him, Yeshua ben Levi says, Emasi coming Kasima, when are you coming? To which he answered, it's a beautiful story. He says, I'm coming Hayom today. He says, I'm coming today. I'm coming today. Huh? And so Ben Levi, Yeshua ben Levi, goes back to Elijah. He says to me, I'm coming today. He says, well, what's going on? He says, yeah, I'm coming today if you listen to my commandments. That's the end of the pasuk. So we've got to prepare ourselves for his coming. Yeah? Are you with me?
Thank you very much, Rabbi. That's nice.
No problem. Anybody else, please? Any more questions? Any more questions? Shana, did you ask a question? Were you about to ask a question? I'm sure you had a hand up. No? No? Have I answered all the questions? I've answered them all.
There's still some left for next week.
Well, I hope we've got some left for next week. I'll tell you why. Because next week we've got Robert and Frank, and we're all coming together, all three of us, and we're going to come and we're going to be talking about preparation for the Yom Tov davening. Remember, a lot of us are going to be at home. Some of us will be in shul, here in shul. but a lot of people will be at home. So therefore, I think it'll be a nice thing as a preparation. We're going to go through to fill out Tal, the prayer of dew. We're also not Jew, but dew. And we're also going to be going through Hallel and some of the other parts of the tefillot. So please be with us next Tuesday evening, I believe, at 8 o'clock. Please come with us. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say, on behalf of everybody, thank you very much indeed, Rabbi Black and Frank, for a delightful and interesting way that you've actually reflected on the Seder and how to make it really special, innovative. And thank you too for the interesting customs and the different minhag, and also reflecting on our own families' traditions as well, and also inspiring with the music. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel. And the message is
very, very good.
And the message is keep your customs. Keep
That's
your
right. Yes.
It's important. It's
Yeah.
part of who we are.
Yeah.
Tradition.
Tradition.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Tradition.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting.
Good night,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thanks very much.
Annette, put the kettle on. Put the kettle on, please, Annette, okay? Kettle's not great. You hoot it if you're here.
Yeah.
Run my bath, will you?
Run my bus.